Hello and welcome to the podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk with dynamic correspondent sports training's Jeff Moyer. Jeff's been a real good friend of mine for about the last 10 years. He's been instrumental in helping putting together the seminar, and he's also had a huge impact on the programming that we utilize here with our athletes. What we're going to get to today, guys, is we're going to try to clear up some questions that people have about the 1x20. A lot of people sit here and have some misconceptions, and we're hoping to clear up some of those. We're going to talk about how we both started using the 1x20, how Doc's influence on us and Yosef's influence on us has helped us set this program and how we use it with our student athletes. What the program is actually to each of us. It's different. I think a lot of people think it's a little bit more than it really is. We're going to try to clear the air on that. Some of the big pros that we've had using this is in like the good things that come from the program. And of course, the misconceptions that people have, because there is a lot of confusion about some things with the 1x20. And then we're going to get into a little bit with how we set up the program. Great talk, guys. I really hope you enjoy it. Let's get right to it, talking about 1x20 here. Let's talk about the background and the philosophy and things of that nature.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll try to keep it brief. It was about 2010. I was coaching a high school football team. We just got done with the season. I just took over as the head strength and conditioning coach. This program had a winning season in about 10 years, and they had a whole gamut of injuries, shoulders, lower backs, and then the starting quarterback fractured his elbow throwing a football. Throwing a football, didn't get hit, didn't get tackled. He was throwing a pass, and his elbow snapped, the right epicondyle, the plate in his elbow. Snap. So I knew that had to be due to poor mechanics. So around this time, our mutual friend Joseph Johnson and I have been in contact, and I knew he was training high school athletes. And I wanted to talk to him about getting in contact with Dr. Yessis to see if he could help me with our quarterback and figure out why the hell his elbow snapped throwing a football. And then two, just kind of learn about what they do with athletes. So while I was trying to get in contact with Dr. Yessis, Yosef told me that he does 1x20 with his athletes, and he told me some of the results he got. Get the hell out of here, man! Because I mean, to me, my background was what we had done. I coached 4 years of college football and assistant strength coach at Hamilton College, and our background was, Charlie Francis, Westside Barbell, Tom Myslinski. Coach Myslinski's he's from the area where Hamilton College is, and the head strength coach there was great family friends, best friends with Mr. Myslinski, Tom's father. Coached him in high school, so we got a lot of stuff from Buddy and Coach Myslinski. And so that was kind of where my background was from. So when I heard 1x20, let's get the hell out of here, man. That sounds stupid. But yeah, I just couldn't argue with Yosef's results. And as you know, man, a lot of coaches' background, their philosophies are driven because of their backgrounds and where they come from. So to me, I was used to doing 8 sets of 2 dynamic effort and max effort days and bands and chains and stuff. So I heard 1x20 just didn't make sense. So I decided to split the team up and do half the team a 1x20 following Yosef and Dr. Yes's recommendations, the other half using the 5-3-1 with, kind of your short to long approach, Charlie Franson-ish, following, Buddy and Coach Myslinski and James Smith's kind of philosophy. So long story short, after 8 weeks, every 8 weeks, I tried to test the kids in explosiveness, broad jumps, vertical jumps, because that's what I cared more about. It's winter 10 months out of the year in upstate New York, so I can't get outside to test their sprint. So that's the only means I could of testing. So we would do that, and from a strength level perspective, the team was right around the same. I mean, improvements in strengths went up equally, I would say, with the programs. The difference was, though, the broad jumps and vertical jumps, the 1x20 group improved, I would say, every 8 weeks, on average, pretty close to 6 to 7 inches every 8 weeks improvement in broad jump, and improvement in vertical jump was around 3 to 4 inches every 8 weeks, as opposed to the 5-3-1 that used, they went up broad jumps probably 2 to 3 inches, and the vertical jumps 1 to 2 inches. So again, not bad, but it just wasn't as good as the 1x20 group. So I decided after 2 8-week blocks or sessions to just switch everyone over to the 1x20, and our results that entire offseason right before training camp, I tested everyone on average. These are some of the averages for the whole 25 kids we had on varsity. It was Class C football in upstate New York, so it was very small. But decrease in 40 times, we're close to 4/10 of a second on average. Average squat increase was 120 pounds. Average bench increase was about 40 pounds. Average broad jump increase was 13 inches. Average vertical jump was about 7 inches per kid, and average body weight increase was about 15 pounds per kid. So it worked. And then the most important part, we went 9-0 that season. And so, most people said, coaches and people that I told all this, the 1x20 about, said it was a fluke. It's the first time the team ever trained. So going into the next off season, we did the exact same thing, except the only difference was I had the kids 3 days a week rather than the 5 I had last time. Going into the next season, our results were identical across the board. Average decrease about 4/10 of a second with the team, even with returning kids. Vertical jump, broad jump, body weight, everything. So it was awesome, and we went 10-1 that year. So I was sold on that. So that's my background. I've been using that now. I worked in a sports medicine orthopedic practice. I was the continuation, the return to play with a lot of the athletes. So using the 1x20 there. I use it with I have adult clients, run boot camps and stuff like that. We use it here with great success. So I've used it with professional basketball players, Division I football players, Division III football players, high school, middle school. I mean, I've used it with everyone. So the argument that most people make that it only works for low level athletes, I would disagree, and I'm sure you would as well with the level of athletes you have, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, it works really well with our guys. With all the kids that I work with here. Um, but getting even past the results, let's talk about what it actually is to you.
Yeah. Again, most people, when they hear, and I fell for it too, most people hear 1x20 and they get stuck on the program. They think that is the whole program, and that is just kind of, that's where you go. You go 1x20 for, a block of time. You go 1x14 by a block of time, 1x8. And although that is true, what I've learned from working with Yosef, doing it through the years, and really working with Dr. Yesus is it's more of a process. It's the process of how we get through things. It's the process I care more about. So the amount of time we're in the 20s depends. The amount of time we're in the 14s depends. The amount of time we're in the 8s depends. And then even we get into multiple sets. It depends, but it's a process based on the individual. Again, I'm sure you've had this problem too when you've had these conversations. It's just people get stuck on the program and don't understand the process of how you got to this. 1x20 is just, for me, an entry point. That's where I start with everybody, and then I progress based on what we find. I have athletes do 3 sets of things, but we worked up from there. But also, it's a mindset philosophy to me. So the mindset is, what is the least amount we need to get better? When an athlete isn't progressing as well, and this has taken me a long time. Yosef has beat me over the head with it, and Dr. Yesus as well. When an athlete isn't progressing as well as I would hope, rather than adding more or doing more or changing, a lot of times now I'll just take out things. I'll do less, and I found that that has improved my athletes tremendously. I did that with a soccer player. She's a captain on a local soccer team here. She was not progressing in her electronic 10 and 20-yard sprints as well as I'd hoped. And so what I did, instead of trying to give more sprints or do more plows or do anything like that, I took out some strength and a jump exercise. So rather than doing 3 different jump exercises, we did 1. Rather than doing, I think she was up to 12 strength exercises: glute ham, squat, calf raises, hip adduction, knee drive, pull back, things like that. I took out a couple of them, and by the end of the summer, and I think 6 weeks, her 10-yard decreased 0.2 of a second. Electronic, using the free lap system. So again, less is more, and I have more stories to go like that, but I don't want to bore people. But to me, that is the mindset. What is the least amount we get better? A lot of people quote that was it Thomas Kurtz quote on the back of his book, efficiency is the highest result at the least expensive time and effort. Well, this program and the philosophy and the mindset that go with it really speak to that quote. So that's something I I'm always quoting. That's a staple of my program.
Yeah, and it's the same here, and I think it's something that we need to kind of, as a whole, as a profession, need to look into more. And it's not to say that we're sacrificing hard work to this, because it's not always a grinder, but squatting a 20 can be a grinder. You know, when you get to those points, like it takes effort. And there's a lot of people I think that confuse the 1 by 20 as being a philosophy, when really, like, I think that you saying it is an entry point, I think is really great, because it's just the starting point for GPP. Like, if if that's really what people want to fight over, I don't know. I do think I agree with you that there's more to it than just the 1 by 20, but it's just GPP. Like, Buddy and Tom wrote that book for Elite. It was like, I don't know, it's like an eighth of an inch thick, and it was stapled together and folded or whatever. It's just GPP.
Yeah.
We just do it in one set of 20, and I mean, they had a bunch of stuff that was two sets of 10 in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, I think people fight about that a lot. One thing that I would like to talk about, though, is how you decide what exercises you take out.
Yeah, man. Well, my educational background is studying with Dr. Yessis. I apprenticed Dr. Yes under Dr. Yessis. I have for 5, 6 years now. So everything for me starts with the biomechanics of what the athlete has to do. So I think James Smith said this. The less something resembles what the athlete has to do in their sport, the less I care about it, and that's kind of how I felt. So let's just go to that particular athlete, that soccer girl. I think she was just doing squat jumps, one set of 6 of squat jumps, and she was doing 2 sets of 5, to get 10 broad jumps in. And we took out the squat jumps because the broad jumps for horizontal power, to me, resemble a little more for sprinting. As far as the strength exercise, she was doing a seated calf raise and a standing calf raise. So I took out the seated calf raise. We had her stop doing the hip abduction adduction because she had done it for a good period of time. So she already had the base. So we took out, I don't know all the math, and, the Excel nerds out there can add up the total volume I decreased, but we took out a good amount of her training, and she improved. It allowed her body to recover. Another quick little story that follows under the lines of that. Caleb Troy, is a tennis athlete that I worked with that now is at the University of Richmond playing tennis. I don't know if I was allowed to say his name, sorry. I worked with him for 3 years. Right before he went off to college to go play at Richmond, we're working on his depth jumps. As you know from dealing with Dr. Verkashansky, she said that that's kind of the cherry on top of plyometric exercises. So we're doing depth jumps along with a couple other plyometric exercises, a single leg compass jump, side-to-side jump. So he was doing 3 total sets of plyometrics, 3 different exercises to get different planes of motion, because he's a tennis athlete. So notice that his other 2 plyometric exercises were doing great, but his depth jumps were not improving, and we were doing it based off of Vertimax. So he'd jump up, touch something. It's just an easy way to quantify, is he jumping high or not. And we noticed that was not getting better. And again, talking with Joseph and talking with Dr. Verkashansky, that is the plyometric. That's the cherry on top plyometric exercise. So and rather than trying to increase the height of the box, go up a little further, or add in another set, what I decided to do was to take out one of his plyometric exercises, actually both of his plyometric exercises, the other 2, the compass jumps and the side to side, and then his depth jump actually started to improve substantially. He went up, I think, 4 or 5 inches in his depth jump in the 6 weeks he was doing it. Again, I wanted to start with the least amount and then work up. That's a quote you've been using in a bunch of your podcasts. You never know what's too much if you don't start with the least amount and work up. So it's been a hard lesson for me. This has been really the first year I can say I've been doing it. But I wanted to see, what was too much. So I just went to 1 set of plyos and then I was going to work up from there rather than just trying to add more. So that's kind of, again, the philosophy and mindset that I've learned using this, 1 by 20 program or what have you.
That's neat. So it's again following dynamic correspondence. Whatever's going to have the least effect,
Yep.
then all of a sudden that magically disappears.
Yeah.
Um, so then looking even more, how, because like people talk about this and they say, well, you do the same thing every day for the most part. Doesn't that get boring? How do you get people to buy into this? Like, how do you get people to want to come back if Craig knows Craig's going to come in and do 20 squats and then 20 benches and then 20 glute hams and that, how do you get Craig to be like, woohoo, let's go work out?
Yeah. Well, I can just attest to what works for me, what's worked for the athletes and my business. I'm sure you got different means of buying and things that you do, but for me, ultimately, because yeah, you're right, doing a set of 20, knowing that you're going to keep doing that, it can get boring. But quote Carl Valley, boring works, and sometimes you got to stay with what works because ultimately, my job is the results. We're in the results business, not the entertainment business. And um, you know, honestly, what's worked for my athletes is they feel better and the results are get better. And they can see it. Each week they add 5 to 10 pounds on their squat, and they still feel great. They're not getting beat up. Unfortunately, and I'm sure a lot of coaches listen to this as well. A lot of my athletes play year-round sports, so we don't do anything. The 1 by 20, after the athletes have become accommodated to it, aren't getting beat the crap. They're not feeling terrible, and they're still able to go practice and do stuff. Now, we can get into that's a whole subject for another podcast, year-round sports and what have you. But point being is, we give them a low enough dose to get results and not beat the shit out of them. And my athletes like results. To quote, to use Mark McLaughlin's results, period. I mean, that's it, man. That's all we like, and kids like that. They like getting on the record board for improvements in broad jumper to jump 10-yard time, 20-yard times, what have you, and they like feeling good. They don't like feeling like they're getting beat up. And then to the counter of that, we do different stuff. So we do a lot of sensory training. So that is the fun part. They'll come in. We'll do a lot of we can make games out of sensory system stuff, out of visual stuff. With when we're trying to do speed work rather than just doing straight linear stuff, we'll play tag. I'll have them do different things that can be fun. Chase this person with your arms tied behind your back, or hold a med ball up over your head and run, or something like that. We'll change it up that way. But as far as doing a set of 20 and everything like that, athletes like results. And if the squat felt hard today and then felt better the next day, and then all of a sudden they did it for 25 reps. The second or third time, well, they like that, and then they know that they're going to go up. So results is ultimately what have driven my athletes' motivation, and then my business. So,
Well, that's a good thing to have tied together, especially if they're moving both in the positive direction.
yeah.
So then let's talk about this with teaching. How does this carry on? Because you opened up talking about breaking down how kids move and breaking down the sports. So let's talk about, because Doc, a lot of people don't understand that Doc's a biomechanist. They look at all these things and they think, everybody always thinks immediately when you're dealing with training athletes, it's physiology, physiology, physiology. But Doc's a biomechanist. Mm-hmm. So how does the 1x20 assist with this initial needs analysis based on the technique of the kids?
Yeah.
And then how does the cuts affect it later, going from 20 to 14 to 8?
Without turning it into a huge theoretical conversation about motor learning, a lot of listeners, I'm sure, know that low intensity, high volume when trying to teach whatever the motor skill is, and then you work up to higher intensity. So this literally is built for that. So let's just talk about let's say sprinting, since the majority of listeners, I'm sure, work with sports that involve running, unless you work with swimming. I'm sure there's some wrestling coaches, but still, let's just talk about sprinting because that's a pretty common thing. What I've learned through Doc. First of all, his biomechanics expertise is unprecedented. But what's different with his biomechanics expertise is it's not just angles in velocities and stuff like that he cares about. It's the qualitative, and then it's also a bit of it's the kinesiology that ties into it. Where are the muscles used? How are they used? How are they sequenced? Are they working sequentially, or are they working together? All that stuff. So that's where his expertise, to what I have found, is second to none. And I've looked all over for biomechanists to study under. I don't want to name drop any names and give bad rep to anybody, but I've looked all through the United States for biomechanics, and Doc is the only one that can tie in the angles and the velocities. But then this is how the muscle is used through it to get these angles and velocities better. So tying that into the 1x20. So we'll talk about sprinting. A lot of young athletes have very weak knee drives. You can see this with when you watch slow motion analysis. One, the thigh doesn't contract very powerfully. Two, the thigh isn't going high enough. And then how that's tied into the cyclical nature of running. All of a sudden, their paw back's not very good. Their foot lands in front of their hips, their heel striking, whatever. But so let's just talk about the pull back. So the knee drive exercise really helps to develop, one, the neuromuscular pathway, two, the feel of what it's like to drive the knee drive, to drive your thigh forward. And this is where Doc's biomechanics expertise comes into play, because as you know from reading his stuff and talking with him, Jay, that the hip flexors are used behind the body and drive the thigh forward. Right. Once they pass underneath the hips, it becomes momentum that carries them. So the concentric action of the hip flexors are from behind the body forward. So the more powerful that action, the higher the thigh will actually go. And so that's why we do that, to help develop that feel. So, and it's not taxing on the nervous system. It doesn't beat them up. It doesn't, if they're playing sports or if they're in season or anything like that, it doesn't make them sore and unable to do things. And it develops, we can get into everything the 1x20 does, the capillary density and the strengthens the ligaments and tendons, everything like that. But from a motor learning perspective, it helps feel that. Now, you might, for those that work with high school athletes and even some college athletes, might notice that some of their athletes don't have a proper knee drive and they don't fold up the leg efficiently. The shin doesn't fold up underneath the thigh to drive forward. It might stay in a long lever. So this is a great exercise to help develop the feel of folding up that shin and driving it forward to create a shorter lever, because that's what the body wants. So this is a great exercise I've used to help teach athletes who run with all long levers, and it just looks weird and awkward and slow. Mm-hmm. So this just helps with that. And then we, going down to 14s and 8s, increase the intensity, which then makes it stronger and stick. But the 20s are great for the initial learning, and then we improve working towards higher intensity means, which then will make it stick if they're able to repeat it. So,
yeah, and I'd actually even piggyback that with, when you look at how we manipulate the intensity with that, because it's so minimal, you're able to repeat it so often. So not only do you see kids getting stronger in these motions and these exercises, but they learn them better, because although you may not be doing 3 sets of 10 in one workout, you're probably doing 3 sets of 20 throughout the week, where you would, if you're going heavier and you're doing more in that one session, you're probably not repeating it multiple times through the week. So it gives you more opportunities to cue it, to coach it, for them to practice it, for them to ingrain these motor patterns. And it also gives you more opportunity to manipulate the load and to improve the technique against a higher level of resistance, because eventually it's going to only come down to how fast it is. Because really, with all these things, that's the limiting factor with dynamic correspondence, with all these exercises, is it's very hard to move as fast as you would when you're really hitting a 10.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the most overlooked aspect from people on the outside, because they just look at it and they just see you know, this all the time. And it's like, well, sort of. Um, because it allows you really to be able to do some neat things with that. Because it's when you start to see it show up, and then you can start to manipulate the exercise more so than the volume and the intensity. Like getting into different types of the knee drives, different types of the lunges. And how those start to show up, and just general like cutting mechanic type things, and those sort of stuff. That's really neat to me.
Yeah.
And that's where the stuff shows up the best, I think.
Oh, I agree. And then, I mean, it helps with overuse because now we've built that base of endurance. We've strengthened the connective tissues and ligaments, which are, in order to strengthen, it's very hard to get blood flow to them, but so you have to get blood flow. So doing 20 reps close to failure or to failure just help improve that. And then, what's great about it with young athletes, because I work with 10-year-olds, 11, 12, 9, and you can find this in Viru's book, The Adaptations of Sports Training. He talks about low-intensity strength training can improve bone lengthening, and then high-intensity strength training can improve bone length or density. So this, a lot of parents for young kids talk about, oh, well, it's going to stunt their growth. Well, actually, no. It's been found the opposite. And you can find that in Viru's book. And he talks about, again, strengthening ligaments and tendons, which, as you know, with plyometrics and speed work, play a pretty big freaking role, man. So you might want to strengthen those. So then when we get to the plyos and you get to the speed work, those are good. And those can, store and disperse elasticity and force and everything like that. So, yeah, man. What's cool also from a like a rehab perspective, all the PTs out there working with baseball players, starting with, and forgive me if I've bastardized this, just I haven't looked into rotator cuff stuff in a while, but when I started working with the football team, all the rotator cuff injuries we had, they first talk about you want to start with endurance for strengthening the rotator cuff. So they give some exercise. Well, this is a great way of doing that. So for my throwers, my tennis athletes, we'll do a set of 20 to build that endurance and everything, and then we work to higher intensity stuff. So I mean, it's literally built into it. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then the one thing that people always say they don't think it can do is develop strength.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm not a scientist, man. I'm a practitioner. I don't know where, because everyone argues the force velocity curve, and doing a set of 20, that's for endurance, and well, yeah, but it works everything. I mean, again, I can't attest. Maybe you're smarter than me. Where in there you get strength, you get power, you get speed, and then you get endurance. I mean, you kind of get all of it with the 20s. Again, that's why we saw such great improvements, and I continue to with athletes who start off doing it. We have a girls soccer player, Division I soccer player. She came back right after the season. We did set of 20 for about 6 weeks with low intensity, easy jumps, and she went up. Her vertical jump went up 6 inches. She has a 32-inch vertical jump, and she's a 5'6" soccer player. It's in there. I don't know the science. I'm not that smart. Matt Tomei, look up Matt Tomei at Central Michigan, man. He can tell you all that shit. Just know it works, man. I'm just a practitioner. I'll find out the science after, but I want the results first. And that's where Yosis really helped me. Let's get the results and then kind of find out.
Yeah. Get the improvement and figure out why the hell it happened later.
Yeah.
But it does, and it's really interesting in how it lays such a successful ground base. Even for, if you look at the athletes that we have here, after going through the program for 2 years, we don't have many female athletes who can't squat right near their body weight for a 20. I mean, a $135 for 20 reps, that's pretty impressive. I mean, at least to me, I think it is. And most of the guys are, I mean, we've changed, like you have, and taking the guys who have been in the program um, out of squatting for a 20, especially the taller cats, because that's just a lot, um, and are doing step ups, but we're still building the squat and hitting a 5, and we've got 2/3 of the team right now this week, so either Wednesday or Monday, that hit 1.5 times their body weight for a 5, and it's just, you know, it's just easy.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, up, down, up, all right, here we go, put it away, good. So that's the end of our lifting warm up, I guess we can call it. Because when we get to the 8s, even if it's a sport squat or a quarter squat or whatever name we want to give it now, they still have. I wouldn't go and just throw a bunch of weight on their back, even if they're gonna squat high, and just be like, hey, enjoy how that feels tomorrow, because those kids ain't gonna move.
Yeah.
So we're trying to build our way that way, as opposed to how we would start about 10 pounds, 15 pounds lighter, and then just run the program. And so far, so good.
Yeah.
I do like the change with older guys that that you brought to our attention with going to the step ups. And if anybody's ever read anything that Bondarchuk's done, he always talks about step ups.
Oh yeah.
And those are awful. But
those are ball buster. Yeah.
Oh my God, they're miserable. But they don't hurt. They don't hurt the next day. They kill you for like the next 40 minutes. The guys have been sore because we've been doing other things, and they're blaming it on the step ups. But we've been doing other things, like a lot of stretching stuff, because a lot of them can't bend. But of course, it's the step ups' fault, because that's what's hard.
Yeah.
And I think that even more so piggybacks onto the whole idea of what is the proper dose and what is enough, because is the physiological load maybe greater? Maybe. Is the CNS load, because you're not putting the bar on your back and squatting it, probably less? I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had less decreases. We've had less guys on our omega wave readings this year dropping below, like into a limited area, than we have in the past when we squatted. And I don't think that that's a coincidence because of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that just shows even more that we're taking back a little more. And then, we're still early on with this, so we'll see where we get in the long run. But I think that I think that's a neat change. And that's why I'm really interested to hear, like, how else you take things out, because I think we can still take more out.
It's hard to undertrain an athlete, and you've said this in podcasts past, man. It's really hard to undertrain an athlete. So that soccer girl I was telling you about, I took out the squats and I had her do the step ups. I'm doing more and more step ups with athletes. Just finding that she's recovering, but her results are just getting better. The less I really try to do, and listen, I'm not going to try to push 1x20 to anyone that emails me or calls me, but the one thing I will say is just do a little less, man. If you do 3 sets, try 2 sets. If you do 2 sets, try 1 set. If you're doing set of 5, maybe try a set of 8 or 10. Just go up a little bit away from the high intensity work. Excuse me. Just do a little less, and I promise you, you'll see better results. Just decrease it a little bit. But yeah, to your point that you made, coaches don't think you can get strong doing this. Like you said, yeah, we have girls that will. I have 13, 14-year-old girls that can squat 135 for 20 reps to parallel. It's great. That's great. That's cool. But you know what I mean? That,
Right.
at some point, where's the transfer? That's all. What I'm always caring about. Where's the transfer? So when we'll get to a set of eight, a soccer player squatting 225 for eight's cool. You know what I mean? That looks awesome if I video it and throw it up on YouTube or something like that. 14-year-old soccer player doing that, but that doesn't promise me she's going to get better on the field where it matters most. So you get a lot stronger doing 20 and then 14. But then there's a point where does the strength matter? And this is again another topic for I'm sure another podcast.
Yeah.
So I'll stop working on strength after sets of 14, and we'll just get into power development from there, and that's where we'll get into 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 5, set of 8, speed squats, or whatever it is. And that's where I just got a what's it called, a assess to perform bar sensei. So we've been toying around with that a little bit this year, and I can tell you off camera, we were testing some of the Bosco, using the Bosco mat. Some of the results I use with kids doing that's been pretty cool. But we stopped caring about strength after doing 14 reps for a while, and that's kind of where learning the philosophy and the process of this program comes in. Because at some point, who gives a shit if they squat 225 for 8 if they're a girl soccer player? It's great, it's cool, but you know what I mean. I want to get speed. I want to work on quickness. I want to work on whatever it is from there. But yeah, you get stronger. I've had football players squat 400 or 500 pounds in high school. They get stronger. Strength is, that's easy. To quote James Smith, it's as easy as, for working with young kids, as easy as falling out of a boat and hitting water. It's easy. That's the easiest thing to worry about. Let's worry about the speed and the power.
Yes. Yes. The speed and the power and the quickness are the things that show up in the game
Yeah.
and are probably the most overlooked and possibly the most confused things too when we talk about training. Because it's also like before the whole idea of getting into like the modified type dynamic effort stuff.
Mhm.
Even taking away more lifts and getting into more sprints and more jumps. It's his name's been said about 32 times in this 35-minute talk, but as Buddy always said, just because you squat more doesn't mean you're going to run faster, but if you sprint a lot, you're going to squat more. So if you're running fast, you're going to be stronger.
Yeah.
Um, and chances are, if you're running as fast as you can, and you're not being a fool about it,
Yeah.
you're going to get faster. So, and to use one of Carl's greatest quotes, it's a crime not to time. So, you've got to make sure that they are running fast and they are, being aggressive with it, but also maintaining these speeds and pushing the envelope. But I think that is something that a lot of people dance around because, the weight room is just a weight room. It's not, in Division I athletics, it's a really great recruiting tool when you have pretty things with bells and whistles. And, we put iPads on our racks and we have gym awares and, and it looks really cool. And the gym aware gives you a lot of really awesome information. But if I've got a cat that can squat 405 for 8, he's a shooting guard, probably don't need to squat 405 for 8 all that much. You probably need to squat a lot lighter weight faster, and you probably need to do some hill sprints and do some jumps and work on how you change direction and a lot of side lunges because at the end of the day, you got to keep somebody in front of you, So understanding how to refocus is something that I really have learned a lot when it's been brought up, with the discussions with you and with Maddie and with Yosef, is that taking a step back and because like you said, man, it's like hitting those big numbers. That's cool, man. Like I like lifting heavy stuff. I really do. It's really fun. It's really cool to me, and I'm sure that if it's only strength coaches listening to that, then they probably think it's really cool too. And I got nothing against it, but when you got a 6'10" kid that could squat, that's 225, 230, and can squat 315, 350 for 8 reps, like, all right, so it's if he's 225 and he's hitting 350, we're over that 1.5 times, And if he's doing that for 8 reps, we're well over it. Um, is that strong enough? Again, that's probably more of a beer or a bourbon type conversation than a podcast. I mean, that's one that can take a long time. But I think it's something that people really want to keep going more and more and more. And there is a point of diminishing returns, and especially in a sport like basketball where you're dealing with such long individuals. I think a time and a place you sort of get to where it's like, all right, that's probably enough. And if we can keep this and we can turn it into speed isn't the right word, but we use that all the time. And it's not really how it works, and we all know that. But we'll just say it anyway because that's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And that's what's fun. So.
Yeah. And then with the program, it's built in, going from general to specialized.
Mm-hmm.
It's built right in there. So we can talk about monitoring and economic indicators. The broad jumps, the vertical jumps are nice, but where we get closer to the season is I care more about monitoring the specialized exercises. Are those improving? Are those looking better? Because those are going to have a bit of a better carryover, depending on the athlete, but better carryover for my athletes. So it's built in to that, which is really cool. And then what's also great about 1x20 as you know, is once the season's going on, it's easy. It doesn't beat up the athletes. So we'll do a set of 14 for in-season athletes. 14 reps. It's not that hard. Not that taxing on their systems. Not going to hurt their in-season play or anything like that. So it's the whole system. Again, it's a process. It's not just a program. And
Yes.
learn. Anyone that's interested in it, I recommend talking. Don't just read a book and expect to know. Talk with it. Contact Jay, contact myself, go to your seminars, call Yosef up, Dr. Yessis, and they can explain it better, and then they will paint you a better picture of it, because it works, man.
Oh yeah, that it does. Jeff, I think this was awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I think this has cleared up a lot of questions, but I bet we're going to have more. So hopefully we can get back here and people leave us some more things that they want to know about, and we can rap about those here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, man.
Awesome, dude. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Special thanks to today's guest, Dynamic Correspondent Sports Training's Jeff Moyer. Really hope this helped clear up some of those questions people have on the 1x20. Guys, if you have any more questions or comments or anything that you'd like to contribute or have answered, please leave comments below either on YouTube, on Facebook, or go ahead and tweet at us. Anyway, we're definitely going to have Jeff back. He's got a wealth of knowledge on this topic and many others. Hope you guys liked it, and we will see you guys soon.